of the 2019 Human Resources Manual.
Is there a second?
I would second it, but it's a few more questions on other sections too.
Discussion.
On the breastfeeding section, which is great.
Can you give a page, Mike, if you're on?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it, 94 or something.
Yeah, 93.
93.
So if you're in the PDF document, let me find out where the page that is.
So,
It'd be 302 if you have the PDF document.
There's just three, it's a great template policy, but there's three spots where it refers to company-wide or where it should be village-wide and on that document. But it's a
And I'd be happy to change it from company
Great
to
addition.
village, that's fine.
The other
If the board's okay with that. Okay.
The other question I had is on page 70, there's some additional clarification on return to work from FMLA leave. In the last section of that return to work section on page 70 of the paper. It says once you've exhausted your FMLA leave at 12 weeks, then you're given 30 days, and then your insurance ends. And I had asked Tyler, some of these people could have accrued sick leave a month. If they're long-term employees, they could still have, 5 months, 6 months of accrued sick leave. But the way this is written, they still get paid their salary, but their benefits end after the 12-week FMLA period and the 30-day extra extension.
Unless they would want to pay it the
Then
full
they would
amount.
have to, which for family is
It's
close
expensive
to $3,000.
per month.
Yeah, so I was just surprised that we don't pay benefits while they're still on paid leave. I don't know.
So it would be typical to pay someone benefits while on paid leave. When Tyler had talked about this before, and it is my incorrect misunderstanding today, but it's when people are not operating on paid leave that we would then be providing the premium, right? So if they have, so someone's exhausted their FMLA, is it the village's policy to continue to allow them to utilize their paid leave?
If they got accrued paid leave, I
Correct.
assume you're gonna pay
And then
them.
because they're being paid through that manner, they would still be considered being paid an employee of the village. However, when that paid leave exhausts,
And they're on leave without pay.
correct. But it's a village decision of whether to allow them to continue utilization of that leave after the FMLA.
But if they do have a medical excuse, say they have 6-month medical issue and have paid leave, we're not gonna,
Do you want me to go through an example? Maybe that would be helpful.
yeah, your interpretation was they end.
Yeah, so
They have
let's go
paid
through an
leave.
example, okay? So you have an employee, let's use the 6 months, okay? So they had surgery, it's a 6 months recovery. They would apply for FMLA. This is, of course, if it's a non-workers' comp issue. If it's workers' comp, they're covered for the whole time, okay? So this is a non-workers' comp issue. They apply for the 12 weeks of FMLA, let's say it's granted, that takes them for about 3 months. That we would then allow them to use their sick credits to be able to get paid for their wages while out. And we would still continue our commitment of the 90% or whatever for their health insurance. After that period of time, and then it's up to you as an employer on what to do with the employee. A lot of we wanted to at least do a grace period, so we wouldn't necessarily cut them off on health insurance at that point. So we would do another month of paying for their health insurance in this scenario, so that would get them through month 4 of being paid. But after that time, if they're still not able to return for the final 2 months, they would have to pay for the full health insurance. We would still keep them on. If they still have sick credits, they would still get wages that their sick credits would pay for their income, but it would be their responsibility to pay the premium at that point. Talking with our labor attorney, it was recommended for us to do this because the suggestion of having an incentive for them to return to work. Because there are cases where there are employees in that if they're having their health insurance and their wages being paid for, there's not necessarily that incentive to return to work. But in this scenario, if you do have an employee, all of a sudden that incentive to return to work is there because they are paying for all of their health insurance out of their own pocket for those last 2 months in that scenario. Does that make sense?
So you mean they're taking sick leave?
They're taking sick,
They're taking their own sick leave, but they're.
but they still have 6 hours remaining, correct?
So, but they have to pay their insurance even though they're taking leave that they earned, sick leave that they earned. Am I understanding correctly?
Right, because it's, after the 12 weeks, it's unprotected leave. So they've exhausted their FMLA at that point, but we're still giving them a grace period. We're still allowing them to be employed. We also do that for ADA reasons as well, so.
But I mean, if, let's say somebody had, 3 months of sick leave earned, or, I don't know, can you bank that much sick leave?
I mean, you can bank, we have some employees that probably have over 1,000 hours of sick. So for those those employees that have been in the organization for a while, they would be able to have at least 6 months.
It just seems strange to me that you would be on, sick leave, or could you use vacation time?
Yep, you can do that, any leave,
So
comp
you do any kind
time.
of leave, right? But we'd say, okay, you're on, so you're still an employee, you're just on a leave,
Yeah,
but we're taking away your health insurance. Is that right? That's how it would work, right?
yeah, I mean,
Okay,
yeah, they're still being paid for the sick, right?
that seems strange.
I think for me, like, the disconnect is, they wouldn't use their sick time before they would go to FMLA. Even in the places where I've worked in the past, that's usually how that works, so that's how you are able to keep your health insurance, is that you burn through all of your sick time, which is what's paid for, because a lot of times FMLA is unpaid, it's just securing that your job is still there for you when you come back, so that's where I guess I'm just a little bit.
Majority of employees here will use sick or vacation or one of their accrual banks while on FMLA. Now, if an employee had all their leaves used up, they could still, of course, like you said, go do up to 12 weeks or whatever their leave is unpaid. But most people want to be paid during that time, so they use their accrual as they're on FMLA leave.
So that's what the recommendation from our attorney was so like if they're using their sick time, that that we're not paying.
The recommendation is after the FMLA period. So what happens after the 12 weeks? What do we do with their health insurance?
But if someone took their sick leave first and then went to FMLA, they would be able to keep their health insurance for that sick leave or whatever leave they have, and then go to FMLA.
I'm trying to understand what you're asking.
Like, so if you have surgery
Yep.
and you're out sick,
Yep.
that you use your sick time, which is paid, your paid time off first.
Yeah, so you do that and FMLA, that's at the same time.
Right, okay, but, so you would be paid for all of that, and then the remaining time on your FMLA where you're not being paid, you're still insured, and then you're still insured that 30 days gap after FMLA ends.
Correct.
If you get to that.
So it'd be about a 4-month period.
That you remain insured.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a policy decision for you as a board. So no, I heard some comments that it sounds odd. Like, so you as a board, if you would like, I mean, if you still want, if as long as someone has sick credits, and this was one thing that Mike and I talked on the phone, I let Mike, I'm presenting you as a board options, letting you know what the labor attorney recommended. But if you as a board want to still insure an employee as long as they have some kind of accrual and are being paid, and that we would keep them on the health insurance, that's fine. It's just that we have some employees, just know that we have some employees because of the amount of hours that they have banked, that they could be almost for a year under that scenario where we are continuing to pay for them to be off not working, but still are being paid, as well as paying 90% or whatever of their health insurance. So in some scenarios, there's not as much of an incentive for them to return to work. But that's certainly a policy that we can do. But that's just know that is one, I don't want to call it risk, but that's one potential that could happen. And that's why the labor attorney did not recommend that.
Hey, John, I think this is, I think we can infer this from what you're saying, but I'm assuming that the labor attorney was integral in writing this exact language that went into this manual.
They did.
Okay, so he.
This didn't come from me, this came directly from the labor attorney.
Okay.
I agree with his approach on the FMLA, that our obligation under FMLA, but we also, once you get out from under FMLA, you can provide benefits under your other health insurance under your regular personnel policies, which aren't guaranteed that you can change. And I would suggest we leave the language on health insurance in this section, but also note the clarification that if you are still on accrued paid leave, that your benefits continue. It's not like it's free. You gotta have a medical excuse. We can check to see how the medical excuse. It isn't a free ride. And they also have had to accumulate the leave. They could have been burning it up all along. And these are long-term employees, and they're also, many of them are probably sick, have cancer or some really critical or chronic illness, and you're pulling their insurance just when they really need it. Now, if the problem is people abusing, then let's get their medical provider statements and go after them that way. I would suggest we modify this to at least carve out that we will continue benefits while people are on accrued paid leave.
So are you proposing that as an amendment to the motion?
Yes, I would propose that.
Okay.
Okay, so,
I'll second that. I don't know if you
could we do a friendly amendment?
Oh.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, well, what would you like that to say, before we make that amendment?
Okay. That the section, page 70, that we add language to clarify that employees will continue to receive their benefits while they're on paid accrued leave, even after the FMLA eligibility period is exhausted.
I'm fine with that.
And who seconded?
Trustee Amanda.
And you supported because you were gonna, do you support the friendly amendment?
What's the friendly amendment?
What the amendment was gonna be?
The original.
I seconded his, he hadn't really made a motion, but I seconded it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, trustee Bachor?
Well, now we're in discussion.
Yes, we are. Well, we have been in discussion, so we can call the question also.
Officially then. Okay, so, I support this, and if this is an issue, this is something that staff can take up as part of the policy of what is allowable for rollover going forward as far as sick leave, et cetera.
Is there any kind of new points to make, or are we ready to call the question?
I would like to have more information on what types of situations this has come up in. And I'll just say, for example, someone who has cancer, and I can see that it would be a real hardship to say, we're taking away your health insurance. On the other hand, if we're talking about stress and unable to work because of some kind of stress or mental health condition, which may be a lot fuzzier for a doctor to do the medical certification and blah, blah, blah. So, that's kind of a different situation. So it's a little difficult to, without knowing the nature of these cases, it's a little difficult to.
I'll say the last one that we ran into without saying any specifics. It was a scenario where someone did run out of all their accrual leaves, so they were then on unpaid status. So, the discussion of paid status, I think is a little different than the last circumstance that we had. So that's where I think, the direction that's being given in the amendment, we can certainly make that work. And trust me, in the last situation that it's a different scenario than the one that happened earlier this year, so.
Well, I don't know what the one that happened earlier is,
It was
or the
closed
last
session.
one, I don't know what.
Yeah,
you're talking about.
I wouldn't really feel comfortable saying those
Yeah,
details in the
yeah.
public
Well, I'm
setting.
not asking,
Oh, okay.
Well, if there is a situation where you have a person who is exhausted FMLA and who has also exhausted all of their sick time and vacation time and any other form of paid leave that they have on, if this, you know, what I think Tyler is referencing is that we have nothing within the scope of our manual to say, at a certain point, then we're going to, our insurance coverage will no longer be active. Because you wouldn't have been paying them sick leave, you would not have been paying them any type of paid leave. So essentially, your only remaining relationship is regarding insurance.
and you wouldn't just terminate that person because of a disability claim or something?
Not necessarily unless we heard from a doctor saying that they're permanently unable to do the job,
Correct.
and we are not